Greetings and welcome, my esteemed guests and subscribers. This is, of course, yours truly, Blight Liger here, and today we are going to be talking about common misconceptions and myths revolving around Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, which you might have read on a mainstream news outlet or perhaps from the lying lips of politicians, bankers, and anti-crypto activists. But let's get started without further ado, talking about these things with real evidence and facts. And one of the most common things you hear about is the Bitcoin's energy consumption, which is a narrative that is mostly used by certain governments and a lot of authoritarian activists of the climate change movement or other movements who want to be more ecological. And there has been a lot of comparisons that the Bitcoin's energy consumption is the size of Argentina or Chile or Portugal. There's always some country comparisons that all the Bitcoin energy consumption is non-green energy, and this is not actually completely true. Now, first and foremost, Bitcoin represents 0.59 of total worldwide energy consumption reported by Markets Insider. So I picked out a lot of news outlets and sources which are very relevant from this year. And basically, there are actually forms of green energy which is used to mine Bitcoin, especially on, and here has a source that 28% of total energy consumed by crypto mining has come from renewable sources. Now, being kind of like the devil's advocate here, I might believe that number may not be close to the truth, but what we do know that it's actually somewhere between 25% to probably 15% as of right now. And I'm pretty sure there's going to be a lot more green energy used for mining. But you also have to understand that out of the top 300 cryptocurrencies right now, only 24 are mineable, and the second largest cryptocurrency in the world right now, Ethereum, will be phasing out mining altogether, and it will transition into a new algorithm which is called proof of stake, which is used on most of coins right now these days, at least variations of it, which is basically just not using any form of a heavy mining to basically accumulate those cryptocurrencies. So this narrative of mining happening through through coal or nuclear energy is going to be going down as the years go by, because as of the new emerging cryptocurrencies, they don't use the proof of work model, which requires the CPUs, the GPUs, or the ASIC type of a mining type of thing. So the energy consumption on the future cryptocurrencies is going to be a lot more greener than it is right now. And I also want to remind people that the biggest Bitcoin mining hub is actually on Sichuan, on China. It's a province which accumulates right now between 10 to 15% of all hash rate for Bitcoin, and they mostly use, hydro energy to produce that electricity. And there are a lot of other regions where the most of the energy is produced by green means, and that's where a lot of mining hubs are actually based on. So the truth of the matter is there is a considerable amount of green energy being used on, accumulating and mining Bitcoin compared to a lot of other industries which tend to be, oh, we're super green, but then in reality they're like 5% only. So considering the amount of adoption in the real world that green energy has, Bitcoin has done, and other cryptocurrency has done, a considerable amount of a push for green energy based cryptocurrency mining. But let's move on. Another one that you hear a lot is most of cryptocurrency is being used for money laundering or illegal activities. We obviously had that Silicon, thing going on, which was years ago, and actually the numbers for illegal activities have gone down as years have gone, and I will be showing that source for you in a second. But what you need to really keep your eyes on is the banks, because they money launder $2 trillion every year. you got Deutsche Bank, you got Danske Bank. They think in this year's they have been caught to basically money launder money, and then they just get, oh, you get a 1 million fine, which is absolutely nothing, because these companies are usually, in process of minting their own dollars or euros or whatever. So the banks are literally stealing money from the people, not the cryptocurrencies. The banking system, the way it's built up, is to serve the money printers, and then it trickles down into the banks, and from the banks it trickles down into mega corporations, and from the mega corporations it goes into the government officials and people in power and media and everything, and then finally it trickles down into the people. So you have to understand that banks really make a lot of profit. The interest rates that you get from certain banks, whether it's 1 or 2%, but in reality is 20%. The banks just take a huge cut from a service that is kind of like archaic these days. And at least in my country, the bank services have become, much worse, less uptime. The old people are not able to access, cash services, and they have to learn all of this digital stuff. Banks are not your allies. They're not your friends. They are basically money laundering the most amount of money in the world. They are the true criminals. And the amount of crypto being caught up in that storm is very, very minimal. Let's look at another source in case you think Bitcoin.com is biased. We have Forbes here talking about in 2020, the all cryptocurrency illegal activity dropped into 0.34%, which is extremely minimal. In 2019, it was 2.1%. And I think this rate is going to be going down and down as more time goes on. I think there's going to be a bit more regulation and a bit more types of things which is going to be keeping frauds away from the space and preventing these types of illegal activities basically happening. So you have to understand that these are narratives that the banks and the governments want to tell you because they don't want to lose that power into the cryptocurrencies, which are eventually going to be making people more free and removing that like unnecessarily middleman culture, which a lot of our world is built on, which is the banks or the aggregators and things like these, which you don't really need. Then there's obviously the issue of privacy coins like Zcash and Monero, which I'm obviously going to be admitting probably a lot of the more criminal activity is going to be happening on those two chains rather than something like Bitcoin or Ethereum. So the privacy chains are where probably the most illegal activity is going to be happening, and but it's still going to be very, very minimal. It's not the real problem here. But let's move on to our next point, which is a bit more something you don't really hear talked about a lot, which is people are saying that Bitcoin is the very first cryptocurrency. And this goes into the realm of semantics a lot. In some ways, yes, Bitcoin is the very first cryptocurrency. But David Chaum, which by the way is building a new cryptocurrency right now, I think it's called XX Elixir or something. It's going to be launched very soon, I think this year, something to look forward to. Maybe we're going to be talking about it later. But he created back in 95 a thing called DigiCash, which was the very first electric money. It was cryptographic. It was like used through banking of sorts. But what Bitcoin created was the double spend, which means that when I send a JPEG file to my friend, the JPEG file still stays on my computer as well, but the double spend is basically a system where the JPEG transfers and removes it completely from my computer, technically, and it moves it indirectly into my friend's computer. So the blockchain is keeping track where the currencies go, and so there can't be a Bitcoin left in the place where it originally was sent from. And this was something that DigiCash, or the eCash as it was called, was basically created. It was not able to solve the double spend problem. So basically you had this sort of like centralized entity there, which was the bank, there behind it to, be hold of those transactions happening. But it was a form of a cryptocurrency or electronic cash that was created before Bitcoin came to be. So in technicalities, eCash was the first one, but Bitcoin in the cryptocurrency and blockchain technology as we know it today perhaps is the first iteration indeed. And also next we're going to be talking about fiat. So fiat money, when I use the term, we mean currencies that are by governments such as US dollar, the euro, the yuan, the yen, the Thai baht or whatever, which are not tied into any commodity, which they were in the past in the gold, sometimes into silver in the past. So this means that fiat money is a form of a money that is basically printed, that doesn't have any, backing into it. It's not backed by oil, not by gold, not by silver, not by anything. Now, people don't really understand that Bitcoin technically is fiat money, because Bitcoin is not backed by anything. It's backed by the network, but you can't exchange Bitcoin into part of the network or anything like that. So basically, Bitcoin and pretty much all cryptocurrencies are also fiat money, but not in the same vein as we treat the government issued fiat. So in crypto, we know what is going to be the supply of that money and how much is the inflation curve and when will it be changed or stopped and what's the maximum supply. So there are more restrictions on how much Bitcoin there can be, which is 21 million. After that, there will be no more Bitcoin unless there's going to be a change in the code, which is very unlikely to happen. I think it would be catastrophic if they would choose that, and push for that would be requiring so much effort. But the narrative what you need to understand here is that yes, Bitcoin is fiat money. There are currencies like stable coins which are not fiat money because they are pegged into currencies in the world, such as we have a lot of US dollar stable coins. We have also gold stable coins such as Tether. We also have some which are pegged into silver. We have some that are pegged into oil and diamonds. And there's going to be a lot more commodity based cryptocurrencies in the world, which are maybe toggled into stocks or shares of the company or something between those lines. So not all cryptocurrencies in the future are going to be fiat backed, but this is a very semantical type of a thing, but I thought I still would be mentioning here on in this video. And speaking of the semantics, we have another one, which is that some people talk about that Bitcoin is a deflating asset, since that it's not inflating past beyond its 21 million supply. And this is not true, as I'm going to be using Wikipedia as the source here. It says deflation occurs when inflation rate falls below 0%, which means negative. Now, in order to be deflating currency, there has to be a deflatory thing in the code. And we have deflatory assets which are being burned in the blockchain. So the supply can be designed to go from 1 million to 1 or 10 coins or tokens. So deflation can exist in the blockchain, but Bitcoin is not a deflationary asset because there's no mechanism inside the blockchain which makes it shrink down from its 21 million. Now, there are people who are saying, well, some people lost their private keys and seed phrases, so those Bitcoins are lost forever. Well, technically, yeah, but they're not gone from the blockchain itself. One day, somebody is going to be pasting their private key or seed phrase the wrong way, and they're going to be accessing some of those lost wallets on Bitcoin. And this is the very important caveat to understand. Also, when the quantum computers are going to be coming out on the full capacity, they are eventually able to crack those seed phrases. This is going to be in years to come, but in the future, nonetheless. And when that happens, they are able to see and access those lost wallets of Bitcoin. So you really have to understand that Bitcoin is not a deflating asset. We don't exactly have a term, let's just call it limited supply. There might be an actual term for this. It's not disinflation, but yes, Bitcoin is not a deflating asset, and some of the other cryptocurrencies are neither. They are fixed supply. And that's something you have to understand. But the inflation curve of Bitcoin, how many are mined on a 4-year basis, that is disinflating. So after the halvings, there's going to be less Bitcoin minted until the 21 is actually harvested. So yes, there's going to be a disinflation on Bitcoin, but let's not call it deflation because that is misleading information. Another one I want to talk about is EOS. And EOS is sometimes called by a lot of Redditors and a lot of people in the space as a failure or a project that raised 4 billion and utterly failed to deliver the product and the Ethereum killer that they're supposed to do. Now, there's two misconceptions about that. Number one is that, first of all, the initial ICO price is above 4x right now. So if you had to put it $4 back into EOS, right now you would be 4 times up. So it would be around $4.4 or something like that in terms of your investment. So people haven't lost money on EOS as an investment. But when we look at it from a technological perspective, what EOS is, what people always misconceptualize, and I have to explain this in a lot of my videos and streams, is that EOSCO is a technology or a platform base for blockchains. EOS is the blockchain, but EOSCO is the technology behind EOS. So there are other blockchains which use the EOSCO technology or the blockchain platform, such as Telos, such as Wax, Jungle, and there are others that use, and Ultra also as well use EOSCO base. So when they raised that money, it was to raise the money to build EOSCO, not just EOS itself. So even if EOS fails, there can be other EOSCO chains which will succeed in the future, such as Telos, such as Wax or Ultra, for instance, which have done really well as of right now. So understand that there's a difference between EOSCO and EOS. EOS is the blockchain and EOSCO is the technology behind it, which EOS uses, Wax uses, Telos uses, and etc. Now let's get into our last 2 points here on the video. One is about crypto tokens. This is another one that people don't necessarily understand. Some people like to call coins as coins. Some people may call Bitcoin a token since it's the native asset of the Bitcoin blockchain. And these can be a bit misleading, but there is a difference between a token and an asset. Now, in Ethereum, we have these things called ERC20 tokens. And on Digibyte or in Cardano or in Ravencoin or Bitcoin Cash, we have things called assets. Now, what is the difference between an asset and a token? In this particular context, when we have tokens in Ethereum, such as ERC20 tokens, or in Tron, we have TRC20 tokens, or in other blockchains, in EOS, we also have, tokens, and in many other smart contract blockchains, they have their own tokens. Now, assets are not created by a smart contract. Now, when I send an Ethereum token to another person, every time there's going to be a smart contract which is going to be executed when that transaction takes place. Now, what that exactly means is when I want to send $1 worth of Ethereum to Jack, or I want to send a $1 of basic attention token to Jack from Ethereum, the basic attention token is always going to be costing me more to send due to the fact that it's an ERC20 token and the blockchain has to execute the smart contract. So there's an extra fee on sending tokens to another person versus the native asset, which is Ethereum. So Ethereum is an asset, but BAT is ERC20 token. So this also applies into NFTs and any other type of token model that exists on Ethereum. So there's always going to be extra gas attached to all the tokens in Tron, Ethereum, EOS, and other smart contract blockchains when you're going to be sending those tokens. But when you are issuing assets, let's say on Cardano or Bitcoin Cash, the cost is going to be exactly the same to send them as it would be to send the native asset. So if I'm going to be sending you Digibyte, or I'm going to be sending you some type of Digibyte asset, which is called, let's say, Investo. And the fee is going to be exactly the same because both of them are assets and there's not a smart contract sending. There's no code behind essentially the asset. So the assets can be issued without the smart contract thing, which is ERC20. ERC20 is a smart contract. ERC721 is a smart contract. So I know this is a bit complex, but assets are basically a better form of tokens because they use less gas, but they may have a different functionalities. So they may have to be wrapped in order to be, traded on an AMM protocol, for instance. So there is a difference between creating an asset versus creating a token. And sometimes in certain blockchains, tokens can be also used to pay the actual transaction fees, such as in Waves, for example. And as our final point, let's talk about NFTs. This is the most recent one. And people are talking about, well, what's the point of NFTs if I can just copy and save the image? Now, when you see a crypto art in any type of website, you have to understand that it's not just the image, it's about the data behind it. When it was issued on the blockchain, who have been the owners of that specific asset, all the data in terms of who it's been transferred to, where it was minted to, and is it verified asset. I can copy paste a picture of your passport. That doesn't mean I own your passport. So you have to understand that being non-fungible means the token cannot be replicated. So it means that that token is unique, and this is how you can verify things. And in future, we're going to have more of these supply chain things. You go into a market and you see, let's say, a can of pineapples, and you can scan the QR code and you can verify that this pineapple has come from a certain country in Africa, and you can see on the blockchain where it go to. It went to first to Cairo, and then it went to Europe, and then it came to New York, where it's in the actual shelves. So you can actually verify, oh, is this a fake product or a real product? So it brings you a form of authenticity and also the ownership over that product. And everybody, even if I copy paste something of an art, digital art, I can always go see, has there been other person who has issued that art first in the blockchain, and I can verify them. And there's other types of things which goes into these NFTs that people don't understand. It's also real world items like real estate, your marriage contract, your in-game items on a Fortnite, League of Legends. It can be many things. NFTs can be pretty much applied to so many different things out there, and it's in that sense a very revolutionary, a powerful tool for many to use. And art is just a one part of it. So understand that you are not saving the actual asset by saving that picture. The blockchain data still exists there behind the actual asset. And that's pretty much my video. Sorry for making this long, but I thought I would be pummeling out these points to a lot of people. And I do want to say there are a lot of anti-crypto activists behind who create fake news. It's mostly banks, mostly politicians. But thanks for watching. I will be seeing you guys on the next video. Cheers.